Okay, let's talk about something that hits home for a lot of people trying to build a life or even just work temporarily here in the U.S. Getting basic financial services like just a simple checking account.
Yeah.
It often feels blocked right from the start if you don't have that standard 9-digit number, the Social Security number, the SSN. So today we're doing a deep dive specifically for you, the listener, who needs that clear roadmap. How do you open a legitimate U.S. bank account without an SSN? What actually works?
And it's really important to understand why it's often tricky. It's not just banks being difficult for the sake of it. There's federal law involved, specifically the Patriot Act. It actually mandates that financial institutions have strict customer identification programs.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to get, check, and keep records of info that identifies every single person opening an account. We're talking name, date of birth, address, and crucially, some kind of identification number.
Yeah.
It's all about preventing financial crime, money laundering.
Right, that makes sense. So the banks need a verified number. If an SSN isn't an option, what's the main alternative we need to know about right away? And what paperwork should people gather before they even think about walking into a bank?
Well, the most significant alternative is definitely the individual taxpayer identification number, or ITIN. We'll get more into that. But even before the ITIN, the absolute first step is getting your documents in order. You almost always need 2 forms of ID,
Yeah.
a primary one and a secondary one.
2 forms.
And they have to be the originals, no copies. And they need to be valid, not expired.
So have those 2 valid original IDs ready.
Yeah.
What else is typically needed? You mentioned more than just ID cards earlier.
That's right. Besides the IDs, you'll almost certainly need a working U.S. phone number. And, critically, proof of a physical U.S. address.
Physical address, not a P.O. box.
Exactly. Banks are usually very specific about this. They need your actual residential address, including an apartment number or, a dorm number, if applicable. And about that identification number, we mentioned the alternative to the SSN. Federal rules allow a few options. It can be the ITIN, like we said, or it could be your passport number along with the country that issued it. Or sometimes an alien identification card number works too. The bank just needs one acceptable number for their records.
Okay, that clarifies the ID number part.
Mm-hmm.
But what about, actually funding the account? Is there a minimum amount needed?
Good point. Yes, usually. Most basic accounts require you to deposit some money right when you open it. It's typically somewhere between, say, $25 and $100. But what's maybe more important to ask about is the ongoing requirement, the minimum balance requirement.
Why is that so important?
Because if your balance drops below that minimum, the bank will likely hit you with monthly maintenance fees. And those fees can really add up, sometimes draining the account if you're not careful. So definitely ask about that.
Okay, good tip. Now, the sources we looked at really emphasize that the type of ID needed can change depending on your immigration status. What are the key differences, say, for U.S. citizens versus U.S. permanent residents?
Right. There are differences. For U.S. citizens, it's usually the standard stuff.
Right.
A state driver's license, a U.S. passport, maybe a U.S. military ID. Those are typical primary IDs. But for U.S. permanent residents, people with green cards, the list is a bit broader. Obviously, the green card itself, the permanent resident card, works. Or a U.S. employment authorization card is also commonly accepted.
So permanent residents might have a slightly easier time documentation-wise.
Generally, yes, because those documents clearly establish their recognized status in the U.S.
Okay, let's circle back to the ITN. You said it's the main solution for non-citizens who can't get an SSN. That includes spouses and dependents too, right?
Exactly. The ITN, that individual taxpayer identification number, is really the central pathway for many people without SSNs. And yes, that applies to spouses and dependents if they also aren't eligible for an SSN. But it's crucial to understand its primary job. The ITN is fundamentally a tax processing number.
Tax processing.
Yeah, the IRS assigns it mainly so people can file their federal tax returns. And here's something important. If you're earning income in the U.S., you generally have to file taxes, regardless of your immigration status.
Even if undocumented.
Yes. And actually, having a record of filing taxes properly can be a positive thing down the road if you ever apply for certain immigration benefits, like citizenship or maybe cancellation of removal. It shows compliance with U.S. laws.
So it starts with taxes, but it kind of acts like a key to other financial doors.
That's a great way to put it. Beyond taxes, the ITN helps legitimize things. You can use it to get paid for contract work. That's where the W-9 form comes in. It helps with other financial transactions. And the big one for our discussion, it allows you to open bank accounts at banks that accept it.
Okay, so how does someone actually apply for this ITN? Walk us through that process.
It's definitely a process. First step is filling out Form W-7. Good news is it's available in both English and Spanish from the IRS.
W-7. Got it.
Then you have to submit that W-7 with a completed federal tax return. Or if you're not required to file taxes yet, say you haven't started working, you need documentation proving you're exempt. And you also need to provide proof of your identity and your foreign nationality.
Is there any single document that makes that proof part easier?
Yes, absolutely. A valid passport. According to the sources, a passport is the only document the IRS accepts all by itself to prove both who you are and your foreign status.
Okay, so a passport simplifies things. How do you submit all this? Mail.
In person.
You have options. You can mist everything in, or you can try to get an appointment at an IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center, like a walk-in office. A third way is using what's called a certified acceptance agent. These are often accounting firms or maybe law firms authorized by the IRS to help with ITIN applications.
And dealing with the IRS, patience is probably required, right? How long does it usually take?
Definitely need patience. If you apply during the busy tax season that's roughly mid-January through the end of April, you should expect to wait around 9 to 11 weeks.
Wow, okay. Yeah. Outside of that peak time, it's generally a bit faster, maybe around 7 weeks, so plan accordingly.
Good to know. Now let's talk about IDs from other countries. What about non-U.S. documents? Are any commonly accepted by banks here, especially for people who might not have much U.S. paperwork yet?
Yes, some are. A really prominent example is the Matrícula Consular card.
That's the Mexican consular ID, right?
Exactly. It's an official ID issued by Mexican consulates in the U.S. Many banks, especially those serving immigrant communities, explicitly accept it. And often, similar consular identification cards, or CIDs, from other countries are accepted too.
Okay. And what if we look at a big bank like Chase? How do they handle IDs for non-U.S. permanent residents, so people without a green card?
That's a really important point for non-permanent residents. For this group specifically, Chase requires that either the primary or the secondary ID must show a U.S. address.
The address requirement again.
Yes. So acceptable IDs in this case could include that Matrícula Consular card, a foreign passport, a U.S. employment authorization card, or even certain student documents like the Form I-20 or DS 2019, which prove legal student status. But one of them needs the U.S. address.
It really seems like that physical U.S. residential address is the major sticking point we kept seeing, especially for non-residents, even if they have an ITIN. You mentioned P.O. boxes are out, virtual addresses too.
That's generally true for most mainstream banks, yes. And the reason ties right back to that Patriot Act compliance and risk assessment.
How so?
Well, from the bank's perspective, accounts for non-residents, or people without clear physical ties here, can seem like a higher risk for, potential money laundering or other illicit activities.
So they need proof you actually live here.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
To satisfy the regulators, they look for concrete proof of a physical residence. The most common ways to prove this are usually things like a recent utility bill or maybe a signed lease agreement in your name at that specific street address.
Okay, it's a hurdle, but not impossible. So let's say our listener has done the work. They've got their ITN, they have their 2 forms of ID, proof of address. Which big, well-known banks are generally good options?
The good news is several major institutions have processes in place for this. Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo are often mentioned. Marcus by Goldman Sachs also reportedly accepts ITNs.
And the requirements are generally similar across these.
Typically, yes. You'll likely need the ITN, those 2 pieces of ID we discussed, and that all-important proof of a valid U.S. street address.
Beyond the giants, though, we found some really interesting alternatives, especially credit unions. They seem much more focused on serving specific communities, including immigrants.
Absolutely. Credit unions often operate under different charters, which can give them more flexibility. Self-Help Federal Credit Union is a great example. They explicitly accept things like the Matrícula Consular, valid driver's licenses from various places, passports, state IDs, military IDs.
That's quite a list.
It is. And then there's the Latino Credit Union, which goes even broader in some ways. They accept a government-issued ID from any country as long as you also have a valid ITN or SSN, plus that proof of current address.
Wow. Any country's ID.
Yeah. And these kinds of community-focused institutions often offer specialized products too, like loans specifically designed to help with DACA renewal fees or citizenship application costs.
That's fantastic community support. Yeah. But there was one even more unique solution mentioned, something called safe accounts. at DC Credit Union.
Ah, yes, the SEEF accounts. These are really interesting. They are checking and savings accounts specifically created for people who don't have an SSN or an ITN. This includes undocumented immigrants and other non-U.S. citizens.
Wait, no SSN or ITN? How does that work with the identification rules?
They accept foreign IDs to open the account. But the key difference, the sort of functional trick that makes it compliant, is how the accounts are structured financially.
Okay.
Safe accounts do not earn any dividends or interest.
Ah, no interest earned.
Exactly. Since there's no interest income being generated, there's nothing for the account holder to report to the IRS related to that account. It neatly sidesteps that tax reporting requirement.
Clever.
Yeah.
So what do these accounts offer then?
They offer the essentials: a safe place to keep money, access to your funds worldwide through a debit card, and, really importantly, a way to avoid expensive check cashing stores and their fees. They also offer services in Spanish. So pulling this all together for you, the listener, getting an ITN is really the most powerful step. It helps with tax compliance and opens doors at many mainstream banks. But if getting full documentation or meeting strict residency rules is proving difficult, remember these other paths. Specialized credit unions and these non-interest-bearing accounts, like the SafeE accounts, offer really important, secure ways to get banked.
And just having that bank account is so fundamental, isn't it? It's about safety. Your money is insured, not vulnerable sitting in cash. It helps you build a financial footprint. And immediately, it saves you real money by cutting out those check cashing fees. Which leads us to a final thought. We see this constant tension, especially for, say, digital nomads or people with strong ties globally, where the physical U.S. address is the biggest barrier. So here's the question to ponder. Could we see a future where maybe foreign national IDs, perhaps combined with new digital banking technologies, evolve to satisfy those core Patriot Act identity verification needs? Could that potentially lessen the dependence on a physical U.S. address and truly open up banking for a more globalized world?